There's a reason Belle Isle feels different. People don't just visit this place, they remember it. Even years later, even if they haven't been back. Because Belle Isle isn't just a park. It's where Detroit came to breathe, to celebrate, to escape, to clash, to gather. And when a place holds that many moments, it stops being scenery. It becomes memory. Today, we're not just walking a park, we're walking an island that carries more of Detroit's story than almost anywhere else. This is History Loves Company. On Streets of History, we slow down and walk the places that shaped Michigan. Not through textbooks, through streets, shorelines, and places you can still stand on. And today, we're walking Detroit's most complicated landscape. Belle Isle isn't tucked away. It sits right in the middle of the Detroit River, between the city and the rest of the world. You can see Canada from here. You can hear freighters pass. You can feel Detroit even when you're surrounded by trees. This island has always lived between things. Nature and industry, rest and labor, joy and conflict. That tension is the point. Before Belle Isle was Belle Isle, this land already mattered. Long before Detroit existed, the Detroit River was an indigenous corridor, not a border, a route. Food, trade, seasonal movement, survival. This island sat inside that system, and that matters. Because it reminds us that Detroit's story didn't start with buildings. It started with water. When European settlers arrived, the island's role changed. By the 1700s, it was commonly known as Hog Island, a working name for a working place. Livestock grazing, utilitarian land use, no romance, just function. And even then, Detroit argued about it. Who should own it? Who should control it? What should it be used for? That argument would become known as the park question, and it never really went away. In 1817, the island was purchased by Barnaby Campo. Over time, large portions passed to Robert Storrs Willis. This is important, because before Belle Isle was public, it was private. Cleared, drained, altered. Homes were built here. Real homes. And traces of that era still exist. Belle Isle didn't start as a gift. It started as property. July 4th, 1845, Detroiters gathered here for a picnic. A simple moment, but that day, they renamed the island Belle Isle for Beautiful Island, named not for industry, not for profit, but for how it made people feel. From that moment on, this place stopped being just land. It became an idea. By the late 1800s, Detroit was growing fast. Industry was booming. Neighborhoods were filling in. Work was hard. City leaders understood something. A great city needed space to rest. So in 1879, Detroit purchased Belle Isle and committed it to public use. This wasn't charity. It was civic ambition. Detroit brought in Frederick Law Olmsted, the most influential landscape architect in America, the mind behind Central Park. Olmsted saw Belle Isle as a place for restoration. Natural meadows, wooded areas, open sightlines. He proposed canals that worked as drainage and leisure, a park meant to heal people. But Detroit had other ideas. Olmsted wanted restraint. Detroit wanted statements, monuments, buildings, civic symbols. The two visions clashed. Olmsted resigned, and Belle Isle became something unusual. A natural landscape layered with architecture. A park that wasn't just quiet. A park that spoke. Belle Isle officially opened as a public park in 1880. And from that moment forward, Detroit began building. Not slowly, aggressively. Because this island was meant to show something. Here's something that most people don't realize. Belle Isle didn't just develop. It expanded. Fill was added over the decades. Dirt from downtown excavations, stone from demolished buildings. Detroit literally poured itself into this island. That's why you still find ornate stone along the shoreline. Belle Isle is layered with Detroit. physically. So before we talk about individual buildings, here's the question that matters most. What does a city choose to build in its most public place? Because every structure on Belle Isle was a decision, a statement, a belief about what Detroit wanted to offer its people. That's what we're walking next. So now, we're going to start moving, structure by structure, year by year, because Belle Isle isn't just one story. It's dozens of them, standing side by side, and it starts right here. Before Belle Isle was a park, before the fountain, the casino, the aquarium, this island was already a place that people came to. And this is the oldest surviving structure tied to that pre-park era. They call it the White House. The exact built date is uncertain. Some histories place it around 1873, built by Walter Schweikirch, a German immigrant stonecutter, who leased land from the Campo family back when the island was still privately owned. He reportedly called it Inselruhe, German for island quietness. And I love that, because it's still what Belle Isle feels like in certain corners, even with the skyline right there, especially on cold days like today. This house also sits inside a much bigger story. Belle Isle wasn't empty history. Long before the park, this island was part of the Detroit River's indigenous landscape, a place tied to movement, fishing, trade routes, and seasonal life. So when we say Belle Isle history, we're not starting in 1880. We're stepping into a place that already mattered. Now we move to what many consider the second oldest building on the island. The Belle Isle Police Station opened in early 1893, designed by Mason and Rice. Look at it. It doesn't look like a city building. It looks like it belongs out here. Fieldstone walls, a red shingle roof, a farmhouse presence on purpose. And those big doors? This building was designed before cars were part of the island's logic. Those doors were about horses, and the function was bigger than police. It served multiple roles on the island, including public safety, river oversight, and even medical response. And during the 1920s, this place became part of Detroit's river drama, cracking down on rum runners moving alcohol across the border. Now we're at one of the crown jewels, the Belle Isle Aquarium, opened August 18, 1904. Designed by the short-lived partnership Mason and Kahn, with Albert Kahn working alongside his former boss, George D. Mason. This is one of those Detroit flex moments that's quiet, until you realize what you're looking at. Because the aquarium wasn't built as a side attraction. It was built like a statement. Detroit invest in culture. Detroit invest in the public. Right next door, opened the exact same day, the Anna Scripps Whitcomb Conservatory, opened August 18, 1904, designed by Mason and Kahn as well. Kahn is said to have pulled inspiration from Thomas Jefferson's Monticello, and even if you don't know architecture, you can feel that classical intent. The conservatory sits on a 13-acre footprint, with gardens and a lily pond area. And out here, the island switches moods, from river and industry Detroit to Detroit showing you what public beauty looks like. And right here in front of it, the Levi L. Barbour Memorial Fountain, designed by sculptor Marshall Fredericks and dedicated June 25, 1937. This is one of those pieces that reminds you, Belle Isle isn't just recreation, it's memory, cast into stone and metal. When you hear a casino, don't picture slot machines. This casino is the older definition, a public building for gatherings, dancing, shelter, and events. The first Belle Isle Casino opened in June of 1887, built entirely of wood, and designed by Donaldson and Meyer. But Detroit grows fast, and a new one rises. The current Belle Isle Casino opened May of 1908, designed by Van Leyen and Schilling. One of the wildest details, the interior once had a beautiful marble soda counter, and it was smashed in 1972 during a misguided modernization attempt. That right there is the eternal preservation battle. Update it can sometimes mean erase it. Belle Isle has always been Detroit's summer release valve. Not vacation, not getaway, just relief. Because for generations, when the heat hit the city, people came here for water. The beaches are part of the island's purpose, A public place where everybody gets access to the river. And that's why Belle Isle built bathing infrastructure early. Swimming here wasn't a side activity. It was a core use of the park. To support that beach culture, the island opened its first bathhouse on June 30th of 1894. Changing rooms, showers, a way to move thousands of Detroiters through the shoreline without turning the beach into chaos. But it didn't last as enough for long, because the island's popularity exploded. So a second bathhouse opened in early July of 1909, and the scale tells you everything you need to know about Belle Isle at its peak. This one was built to handle crowds on an industrial level, a public facility designed for mass summer Detroit. Bathhouses aren't glamorous, but they're one of the most honest structures a city can build. The beaches are still doing what they've always done, giving the city a place to breathe. Today, Belle Isle is a Michigan state park, maintained, actively invested in, still debated. Some people feel it's safer. Some feel it's changed. Both can be true, because Belle Isle has always evolved. If Belle Isle means something to you, a childhood memory, a first bike ride, a family tradition, a quiet place when you needed one, share it. Put it in the comments, because we're collecting these stories.